All right, this is lesson 14, which I teach different from the lesson. So you will need to take notes, and this is how I expect you to work it. All right, so there are three forms for the linear equation. Remember, linear is a first degree, crosses the x-axis once, crosses the y-axis once. It has one direction. It either rises or it falls. All linear equations. All right, so the standard form for a linear equation is ax plus by plus c equals 0. Oftentimes, this is how the equations are written in textbooks. And normally you will not solve it using or graph it using this form. You will use one of the other two forms. You've heard the slope-intercept form a bunch. The slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. M is the slope, b is the y-intercept. Thus it gets its name, slope-intercept, right? Remember, the slope is the change in y over the change in x. The y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. We are not going to use this format. We will not use slope-intercept format for this lesson. That is how the lesson is taught. We're going to use another format. It is called the point slope format. That's S-L-O-P-E. Point slope. And the format of the point slope is y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. It is called the point slope formula for the very reason that I will show you. Here is the slope, which remember is the change in y over the change in x. And then you have a point, a coordinate point that you're going to plug in. And for this lesson, you will either be given two coordinate points, or you'll be given the slope and a coordinate point. That's why this form of the linear equation is more applicable to this lesson than the slope-intercept. All right? So look at example 1 on page 76. We have 2 points, -3, 2, and 3, -3. The first thing I want to do is calculate the slope. So remember, it's always label your coordinate points. Doesn't matter which set is 1, which set is 2. It just helps you to keep it straight when you're calculating the slope. So it's the change in y, -3 minus 2, over the change in x, 3 minus a negative, which is going to be plus. So we end up with -5, 6 as my slope. I'm going to plug that in for the slope. Make sense so far? And I'm going to use one point. It doesn't matter which point you use. I'm going to choose this point to plug in. So my y stays. Now for y sub 1, I'm plugging in the y coordinate. -2 equals, for m, I'm plugging in the slope, -5, 6, open bracket, my x stays, x, and it's minus the x coordinate point, but minus a -3 gives me +3. Does that make sense so far? All right. Y minus 2, I'm going to distribute the negative 5/6 to both of the terms inside the parentheses. It's negative 5/6x. Now, when I multiply negative 5/6 times 3, before I multiply, I will simplify. Really, that's 3 goes into 3, 1, and into 6, 2. So it ends up being negative 5/2. I'm not done. I want to subtract 2. I want to add 2. Move the 2 to the other side. But I want it to have a denominator. I know I'm going to combine it with this term. So I want it to have a denominator of 2. So remember, I can multiply any term by 1. So that becomes negative 4/2. So I'm going to add 4/2 to both sides. This side eliminates, and I have y equals negative 5/6x minus 1/2. Negative 5/2 plus 4/2 gives me negative 1/2. So I begin with the point slope formula, and I end up with the slope intercept. But that's the equation. So when I'm giving 2 coordinate points, first thing, I'm calculating the slope. Then I'm plugging the slope and 1 coordinate point into the point slope equation and simplifying it until I get to the slope intercept form. Make sense? All right, now let's do another example. In example 2 on the top of page 77, instead of 2 points, now it's going to give me the slope and 1 point. So it says, find the equation of a line that passes through negative 4, 7, and has a slope. So my slope is going to be negative 3/5. All right, that's easy. I'm going to plug in the slope where m is. I'm going to plug in my points where the x sub 1 and y sub 1 are. All right, so I start with y minus my y point, which is 7, equals the slope, negative 3/5, times x minus my x coordinate, that would be minus 4, minus negative 4 rather, minus negative 4 gives me plus 4. I'm going to distribute the negative 3/5 to both of the terms inside the parentheses, and I'm left with y minus 7 is negative 3/5 x minus 12/5. Now I know I'm going to combine the 12/5 and the 7. So I want to make this 7 to have the same denominator. So I'm going to multiply by 5 over 5. That's negative 35/5. So I'm going to add 35/5 to both sides, eliminating the 7 on the left-hand side, and I have y equals negative 3/5 x, positive 35 minus 12 gives me positive 23/5. And that's my equation. So, I don't want you to follow what the book says. I want you to use the point slope formula to solve the problems in this lesson.